On a peaceful morning in the capital city of Paluma, in a corner alley hidden from passers-by, a group of people were suffering from mistreatment. An elderly white-skinned man with white hair, whip in hand, mercilessly beat those of lower status. They were the Enhan half-humans, creatures with blood that was half-human, half-demon. Though not vastly different in appearance, just slightly distinguished by small horns or a few unique characteristics. They were still viewed as the lowest class in society, with almost no rights like full humans. Most of them were forced to do hard labor without being treated decently. After an exhausting day of work, a young merchant appeared. His name was Banaza, with a gentle figure and soft-spoken manner. After checking his goods, he generously rewarded the porters with extra money so they could buy something to eat. This kind act quickly became a topic of discussion among those around, who thought he was too humane toward the half-demons. Even the half-humans who received help hesitated to accept it, but were urged by a girl in a vest named Quen to take advantage of it quickly because the coffee shop was having a buy two get one free promotion. At this point, no one hesitated anymore. The whole group cheered joyfully and left with hearts full of gratitude. Some merchants nearby showed displeasure at seeing Reinhard Banaza help these people beasts, claiming he was just trying to create a good image. However, for him, that brief moment was enough to warm his heart. He understood clearly that not everything could be bought with gold, especially empathy between different species. Suddenly, a strange light erupted and enveloped his entire body. The surrounding space immediately vanished, replaced by an ancient summoning ritual. Before him stood an old priest from the kingdom of Kryros, who announced that they needed a hero to save their country from the threat of the demon lord. Reinhardt, a person who had never held a weapon, felt everything was too sudden. However, the royal court quickly conducted an assessment to find his special skills. When the results were announced, the entire hall fell silent. The system only confirmed that he had negotiation abilities and arithmetic thinking skills that seemed only suitable for trading, not for the role of carrying the kingdom's fate. In contrast, the person summoned after him possessed all the characteristics of a perfect warrior. That person was given the title of Capital Hero, while Banaza only received the mocking nickname of Balcony Hero, with no authority or responsibility. His desire to return to his old world was immediately rejected, because the summoning gate had been permanently closed. As a form of consolation, the royal family gave him a small piece of land in the Delbia forest, a desolate place, far from the center. The only condition was not to reveal anything related to the failed summoning. The next morning, he quietly left the capital. The carriage driver was a man of few words, but throughout the long journey, he still revealed some important information. Half-humans here were no longer considered slaves, although prejudice had not completely disappeared. Before parting, Banaza received a bag sent by the royal family, along with a warning that the area showed signs of dark forces. As soon as he set foot in the assigned area, he opened the bag to find it filled with food, money, and some basic materials. However, in an instant, monsters from all around simultaneously approached. At that moment, the skill system automatically activated, revealing that the bag had been enchanted to attract monsters, a sophisticated trap. After just a few operations, he managed to dispel the enchantment, something seemingly beyond the capability of ordinary citizens. Not stopping there, the system announced that the forest was infected with demon essence, an energy source that caused degeneration in living organisms. Without hesitation, Banaza chose to purify the entire area. In the blink of an eye, an extremely powerful light erupted like a divine tsunami, wiping clean all traces of darkness spreading here. When the light subsided, he noticed his body beginning to change strangely. Each stat in his body continuously surged, far exceeding all normal measurement limits, until all displayed the infinity. Along with this unimaginable growth, new abilities appeared one after another. Transformation, instant teleportation, the ability to learn spells instantly. It seemed the system had unlocked all his hidden potential in the moment of purifying the Delbia forest. Realizing that life in this world couldn't be temporary, he decided to change his identity, taking the new name Fenris and registering as an adventurer at a nearby guild. The classification system was very clear, from rank E for beginners to rank S at the pinnacle. Just as he completed the procedures, he encountered a small girl frantically searching for someone to escort her to the Delbia forest, a place that no one dared to approach because of rumors that monsters still lurked after the strange incident that had just occurred. Without hesitation, Fenris offered to help. In his mind at that moment, he simply thought that teleporting there would only take a light touch, not requiring much effort. However, this action made everyone around skeptical. A group of experienced adventurers led by the female knight Balirosa appeared, clearly showing their suspicion, not hesitating to criticize him for daring to make such a bold offer. To avoid prolonged misunderstanding, Fenris invited the whole group to go together. When he used teleportation to take everyone out of the dark alley in the blink of an eye, everyone was truly stunned. the atmosphere shifted from doubt to admiration, with some apologizing profusely, others bowing in gratitude. However, just when the situation seemed stable, something unusual began to arise from the girl who had originally accompanied them. The system interface appeared again, with a serious warning that revealing information about the purification spell could cause major consequences if it fell into enemy ears. Almost immediately after, Ballyrosa suddenly asked the girl to reveal her true form. The request, which seemed like just a test, unexpectedly became reality when before everyone's eyes, the girl's true form was revealed: a giant wolf, brave, and with a demonic aura, calling herself Fen, one of the 4 heavenly kings of the Demon Lord. Fen only needed to release a smoke containing demon essence to make the entire group of adventurers unconscious. Only Fenris maintained his clarity, quickly teleporting everyone back to the safety of the city. As for himself, he decided to stay, alone, facing the creature roaring in the vast forest. Unsure of how many types of magic he currently possessed, he decided to test them all on this wolf right away. As soon as the battle between Fenris and Fen officially began, the creature of the 4 heavenly kings didn't wait for any signal but immediately charged forward at a terrifying speed. Faced with this overwhelming force, Fenris was forced to cast a high jump spell to avoid a direct hit, nearly losing balance and falling flat on his face. Regaining his stance, he quickly unleashed an earthquake spell, raising the ground to create a barrier like a miniature fortress. To counterattack, Fenris immediately utilized a whirlwind, modeling it after ancient tactical styles, creating a giant vortex to envelop his opponent. However, Fen proved to be equally formidable, using short-range teleportation to avoid attacks by a hair's breadth, continuously weaving between techniques without backing down. The battle between Ryuta and Fenris continued tensely as both sides kept unleashing various forms of magic, causing the space to continuously distort. In a moment of calculation, Ryuta utilized gravity, creating a strong pressure zone, making it difficult for the opponent to move. The system immediately presented a series of suggestions like a tactical menu. Among them was a dangerous spell that allowed turning the opponent into a servant, completely stripping them of free will. However, the old memory from the slums of Paluma, where half-humans were once tortured by humans, made Ryuta extinguish that thought. This hesitation gave Fenris more time to resist, continuously releasing magical power to break through the gravity layer. Nevertheless, she gradually weakened as the energy source in her body was depleted. Finally, with no other option, Fenris had to accept defeat. Seeing that the opponent had lost the ability to resist, Ryuta chose to stop. He viewed the lives of any race as equally valuable. This notion caused Fenris to waver. Instead of showing hostility, she reverted to her true form, a slender white-haired girl, then collapsed from exhaustion. Ryuta silently put his coat on her to keep her warm, then lit a fire and began reviewing all his available skills. By the time it was nearly dark, Fenris woke up and found herself being cared for. She wore new attire, her eyes filled with emotion. Without saying anything, she knelt before Ryuta, pledging absolute loyalty, promising from now on not to harm anyone again. Despite Ryuta's attempts to refuse, Fenris remained steadfast, even crying when she felt she wasn't being accepted. Finally, to avoid further complications, Ryuta agreed to let her accompany him, on the condition that she keep her promise of peace. As night fell, they sat together around the fire. Ryuta shared about his past, about how he was just a merchant drawn into this world. Seeing that he hid nothing, Fenris just smiled. For the Fang Wolf tribe, loyalty was a sacred thing that couldn't be denied. No matter what form their master took, they would always remain devoted to the end. A month later, in the capital of Kryros, the atmosphere in the royal palace began to become tense. The escort army for the capital hero in the campaign to hunt down the Demon Lord had suddenly been completely defeated. When questioned, the self-proclaimed hero didn't hesitate to blame the soldiers for being too incompetent, forcing him to shoulder everything. The king appeared hesitant, then turned to ask the captain to verify. The truth shocked the entire court. In the first battle, the central hero was the first to flee, leaving the soldiers to fight in desperation. Moreover, after many days of training, that person still hadn't improved. His stats hadn't changed, and he hadn't learned any new spells. He couldn't even handle low-level monsters. Meanwhile, Fenris and Fen were building a simple life in a small town near the border. The two went around the streets looking for ways to make a living, integrating with the local people. Once, while buying vegetables, the stall owner misunderstood that they were husband and wife, so he enthusiastically promoted his goods with a friendly attitude. This coincidental story gave Fenris an idea: if the two pretended to be a couple, they would avoid many unnecessary complications. Without needing lengthy explanations, just claiming to be husband and wife, outsiders wouldn't question further. Fen showed extreme enthusiasm. Not only did she agree, but she also showed clear pride, even raising both hands high, her tail wagging as if she had just achieved the greatest honor of her life. For her, whether pretending or sincere, being bound to the strongest person was already destiny. That day, Ryuta and Ral returned to the Adventurers Guild to register as members. Ral looked excited, feeling as if the two had just been connected by some ritual. In her Fang Wolf tribe, sharing half a bone symbolized a lifelong connection. When it came to naming, Ral almost blurted out her real name, but thankfully Ryuta quickly interjected, requesting the use of aliases to protect their identities. Just then, an urgent mission was announced. Monsters were approaching the city, with a more attractive reward than usual. Although Ral urged immediate participation, Ryuta still hesitated, thinking he wasn't capable enough. Finally, he was dragged along with her to the battlefield. They quickly discovered the group of warriors they had met before, surrounded by a pack of demon bears. A red-haired female warrior named Barbari Rosa was seriously injured. At the critical moment, lightning struck down, dispersing the enemies, followed by a lethal blow from Fenris that sent the monsters flying in all directions. After helping, Ryuta introduced Ral as his companion. Ral showed displeasure at not being publicly acknowledged as his wife. When a bear suddenly attacked, her slight glance was enough to make it retreat. Afterward, she proposed taming this creature, putting a collar on it and naming it Seabai. Ryuta used his transformation skill to make it take the form of a rabbit for easier carrying. Impressed by their power, Barbari Rosa begged Ryuta to guide her group in combat. The group consisted of 4 people: her, Bevel, Banos, and Baser. They recounted that after the army was decimated by monsters, the capital hero refused to fight without a strong enough escort team. The king therefore forced soldiers to train rigorously, just enough to defeat monsters like the ones they just encountered. Ral sensed danger from the 4 girls surrounding her husband, so she forced Ryuta to acknowledge their marital relationship. Although he intended to refuse the training, he eventually agreed because Ral gently persuaded him. The problem was that he had never taught anyone. Everything he had was thanks to the system's guidance. Nevertheless, as soon as he nodded, they were ready to learn. The warrior group also asked to stay at the place where the two were temporarily residing. Though unclear about who owned the house, Ral still nodded to let them stay. Meanwhile, in the Demon Lord's territory, news about Fairy's failure and the forest being purified by a person of unknown identity had quickly spread. This enraged the Demon Lord, who ordered Ryuta's capture at all costs. Fenris's new life seemed like it would pass in peace, but in reality, it was a series of experiences beyond prediction. From the moment dawn broke, before he could fully open his eyes, he jolted awake by the feeling of someone lying close beside him. Indeed, Fen, his current companion, was casually resting her head on his arm, looking completely satisfied as if it were as natural as breathing. Fenris didn't hesitate to remind her that they were pretending to be husband and wife, so sleeping in the same room was entirely reasonable according to their roles. For her, it was just a small step in their disguise plan. Ryuta, however, was extremely embarrassed, unaccustomed to this kind of intimacy that exceeded proper etiquette, so he chose to go out to the hallway to avoid awkwardness. However, Fenris quickly blocked his path, pointing out that if anyone saw him leaving the room alone, their husband-wife role would immediately be suspected. Reluctantly returning to bed, Ryuta sat down with a flushed face. Before he could gather his thoughts, he was suddenly pulled into an unexpected clothes-changing session. Fenris had brought out new clothes and was about to help him change right there. Fortunately, Balirosa suddenly burst in without warning, coming to find Ryuta to discuss training. No one mentioned what had just happened, all focusing on the training session. Balirosa began with a battle against a giant boar. Despite attacking strongly, she was still overwhelmed. Bolano rushed to save her but ended up getting injured. Fenris quickly commanded the defense, while Ryuta guided Biller to counterattack. However, the bow and arrows couldn't penetrate the thick skin. Braza cast a few spells then completely ran out of energy. The formation became chaotic, losing control. With no other option, Ryuta rented a large house with money received from the previous mission. He had it completely repaired, creating a stable environment to live in. Fenris was in charge of cooking dinner, bringing to the table completely raw dishes that made everyone uncomfortable. Fenris had to work with Balirosa to grill each portion. The dinner finally took place happily, with various dishes and flavors. Everyone praised the female knight's cooking skills. Fenris was slightly displeased, but when she learned that the salad had been prepared by Ryuta himself, she immediately changed her attitude, silently eating her portion with visible satisfaction. That night, they went to the guild to complete the mission. While waiting, Fenris asked to go outside. Left alone, Ryuta unexpectedly received an invitation from the royal family, asking him to support the capital hero's army in the campaign against the Demon Lord. His reputation from previous monster battles had begun to catch the court's attention. However, Ryuta didn't want to be drawn into political conflicts, so he refused. On the way back, he encountered Fenris returning in a disheveled state. It turned out she had just attended a cooking class with a desire to improve her skills. However, because of her power exceeding limits, she continuously damaged utensils, even accidentally using magic to speed up cooking, turning everything into an inedible mixture. Meanwhile, news about an adventurer daring to refuse an invitation from the royal family had reached the capital hero's ears. He was extremely displeased, showing an arrogant attitude, even openly challenging the other person to come and bow in submission. Unfortunately, the response from Fenris remained unchanged. He completely ignored it. Back at the new house, Fenris's 4 students Milano, Biller, Braza, and Balirasa were still being trained. However, while the physical training tasks were nowhere near completion, Milano enthusiastically went to the field, personally plowing the soil to plant vegetables as if she had settled down for the long term. There was no sign of sword practice, but she never let go of her hoes and spades, making Fenris just sigh, thinking to himself that the simple life he dreamed of had now become stranger than anything he had imagined. During training, Fenris coached Beals, who still only dared to practice shooting at wooden targets instead of aiming at living creatures. Milano frequently became exhausted, so Ryuta gave her a ring to help recover magical power. Unexpectedly, she wore it on her ring finger, making Fenris jealous. Meanwhile, Balirasa remained helpless against monsters, having to call for help continuously. Fenris saved her but didn't forget to remind her not to call her husband in such a coquettish way anymore. At the same time, Ulimanas, a cat-eared demon who had once had an audience with the demon lord, was watching from afar. At dinner, Fenris personally cooked for the whole group, even preparing a special portion for Ryuta. She admitted that she had been learning to cook each time she went to town, gradually feeling the joy from culinary arts. Seeing her so devoted made Ulimanas find it hard to believe that she was once one of the 4 heavenly kings. Therefore, she entered the house under the pretext of patrolling. Fenris quickly acknowledged to the guest that she and Ryuta were newlyweds living here. While drinking tea, Ulimanas glanced at both of them. Seeing that Ryuta was not affected by demonic energy and unable to gauge his strength, she became even more suspicious. To find out more, she brought up the topic of the Delave forest, a place that had been unusually quiet lately. Ryuta calmly replied that he had purified it. This information shocked Ulimanas, because that forest was the base of Fenris's brother. The purification meant he could no longer be alive. Fenris confirmed that she had anticipated this early on. As a warrior, she accepted the loss. For her, love and loyalty were more precious than blood ties. The 4 girls in the training group who were eavesdropping outside now also knew clearly that Fenris was the wolf that had nearly killed them. Ulimanas began calculating, planning to use the opportunity of a practice duel to eliminate both of them. However, Fenris interjected in time, not hesitating to mock her opponent for daring to approach her husband. The duel took place right after. Ulimanas used a top-down attack strategy, but Ryuta only needed to snap his fingers to neutralize all her magic. The binding attack afterward forced her to surrender hopelessly. The next morning, the group sat down to discuss Fenris's true identity. Although concealing it was against the law, everyone had been rescued by this couple, so no one had the heart to report them. Just then, dragons appeared outside, led by Ulimanas herself. She had returned with the intention of revenge. Ryuta showed no fear when facing such high-level creatures. After observing for a while, he summoned heavenly lightning that wiped out most of the dragon horde. The remaining ones hastily retreated, abandoning even their leader. At this point, Balirasa came up with the idea of throwing a hoe at a dragon, joking around as if it were real. Unexpectedly, Ryuta supported it with a series of enhancement spells, turning it into a giant projectile, knocking down another dragon. Balirasa was thus jokingly called the Dragon Slayer hero. The rest of the group regretted that there were no more dragons to piggyback on for a title. Meanwhile, the Demon Lord had been monitoring everything from afar. Witnessing such extraordinary power, this time he decided to take action personally. After the incident of being monitored, Ryuta decided to establish a barrier around the house to warn if any demons approached. Inside the house, Fenris, besides being a wife, also played the role of a famous guard dog. Cute, large, and extremely uncompromising. Nevertheless, she still often reproached him for being too soft-hearted for not dealing with Minas the previous day. However, the real reason was the feeling of guilt for accidentally purifying the forest, a place where living beings once resided, making him reluctant to take action. Fenris understood this sadness and tried to comfort him with everything she had. Meanwhile, the 4 young trainees kept discussing Blaux's dragon-slaying title, although most of the credit was due to Ryuta. Seeing them fascinated with the hoe that had killed a dragon, Balirasa quietly returned to training, still regretting the opportunity she had almost had to gain a precious title to return to nobility. Just then, a stranger stopped by, asking for directions to visit an acquaintance. Since no one lived here except for Ryuta and his wife, Balirasa immediately became alert. The man claimed to be an old friend of Fenris. Though he said he meant no harm, his real purpose was to scout the situation. Before leaving, he called himself Goza and asked to pass on a message. Immediately after, the warning barrier sounded, revealing that the visitor was the demon lord whose real name was Gazaru. The next morning, Gazaru returned, properly knocking on the door like a guest. On his way in, he brought along Balyarasa, leaving her nearly petrified. The demon lord got straight to the point, inviting Ryuta to join his side. The invitation was not accepted. Ryuta firmly maintained his neutral stance, not wanting to be drawn into the conflict between the two races. Gazaru then revealed the deep history between humans and demons from the time of the first demon lord, who was originally a human forced to be king who had started the war due to slavery conflicts. Currently, he had no ambition to rule, only wanting to prevent humans from gaining more power to oppress demonkind. The tea hadn't cooled down before the proposal was rejected. Gazaru left, but still kept Ryuta and Balyarasa in mind. The latter, despite showing no change in expression, was still trembling inside. The next day, she went downstairs and was surprised to see the demon lord having breakfast with the host couple. Terrified, she made an excuse about being busy sleeping and fled. Gazaru clicked his tongue in appreciation of her interesting character, then intercepted her to chat privately. Each time this happened, Balyarasa found ways to slip away. Gradually, news of the demon lord frequently loitering around Ryuta's house reached the royal family. The king was furious, believing that Ryuta not only refused the court but also aided the demons. While the court was preparing to mobilize troops, the princess strongly objected, arguing that rash actions would push Ryuta to truly join the opposition. Despite the objections, the king still ordered preparations for an attack. The capital hero immediately volunteered, demanding to personally subdue the man living in the forest, whom everyone had begun to fear. While Fenris and his close friends were enjoying a peaceful life in the distant countryside, on the other side of the world, the internal affairs of the demon faction were undergoing major changes. At the center of the dark territory, Demon Lord Go, the leader of all monsters, suddenly announced that he would leave the castle to visit an old friend whom he cared about greatly. That person was none other than Fenris, who had once made the entire Delbia forest shine with an unprecedented purification spell. Ulimina's one of the closest advisors tried every way to dissuade him. Both concerned for the safety of the king she revered and worried that the army waiting for orders to march against humans would be delayed. For the past week, thousands of soldiers had been standing by in a state of readiness, but Go still leisurely sat sipping coffee, calculating his visit to someone once considered a genocide criminal who had vaporized an entire forest with invisible power. Meanwhile, far from the conflict, Fenris was contemplating the idea of taking newly created magical products to sell in the city. He hoped to earn some extra money to support the simple life of himself and his companions. Fen, the wolf-shaped girl, showed concern. She feared that it was out of consideration for her feelings that Fenris had not accepted the invitation from the human royal family to join the campaign to eliminate the demon lord. According to Fen, if he had chosen to pursue glory instead of hiding, perhaps by now he would have had a resounding reputation, abundant wealth, living in luxury instead of having to struggle with small trades as he was now. However, Fenris held firm to his position. What he craved was not status, power, or the acclaim of the world. He just wanted to peacefully live a quiet life in this other world, not being drawn into any more power struggles or wars. His intention was being considered when a series of rapid knocks shattered the quiet atmosphere. Stepping outside, he was surprised to see an entire army in shining armor. Leading them was the capital hero, the one who had once been hailed as a savior, now boldly criticizing Fenris, accusing him of colluding with the demon lord, even fabricating all sorts of far-fetched reasons to turn Fenris into a traitor in everyone's eyes. Seeing himself as a symbol of justice, he boldly declared that there were only two paths: either submit to become his subordinate and join the campaign against the demons, or be deemed a traitor and be dealt with on the spot. Ending his self-satisfied proclamation, the capital hero glared, waiting for a response. Ryuta bluntly refused, not wanting to be drawn into any conflict. The opponent's expression immediately changed, turning to threats, forcing the entire group to persuade him. If not, they would be seen as rebels. Understanding the risk, Ryuta decided to leave this place, not out of fear but to avoid trouble for those around him. Fenris didn't hesitate, expressing readiness to follow him anywhere. More surprisingly, all four female warriors who had been studying under Ryuta also unanimously decided to leave, because they had realized something more important than titles, trust, and kindness. With this support, Ryuta cast a large-scale teleportation spell, taking everyone, people, luggage, houses, even things scattered around the yard. Everything vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving behind the self-proclaimed hero in confusion. Just then, Demon Lord Gazaru appeared, only to see the cold, empty space. Angered, he blamed his subordinates entirely and declared he would lead his army straight to the capital of Kryrode. While everywhere was preparing for a fierce war, in a far western corner, 6 people had managed to escape the vortex of conflict. Their new home, though simple, was full of warmth. For Ryuta, Fenris, and their teammates, the tranquility of that place was more precious than any power, because this place was truly the life they longed for. After the Demon Lord launched a full-scale attack, the kingdom of Kryrode fell into a defensive position. The king panicked, ordering all mages to cast a large-scale purification spell, the final option, despite its heavy cost. After chanting like a prayer ceremony, holy light covered the sky, temporarily pushing back the demon army. However, that counterattack left all the mages exhausted, and the king himself fell ill, making the court unable to defend against the next attack. While the royal palace was still in chaos, Ryuta and Fenris lived peacefully in a distant countryside. Fen began researching the local market, planning to trade defensive equipment. Brasa tried her hand at vegetable business, while Biller returned to horse training. The 2 remaining people hadn't determined their direction yet, temporarily helping with housework. Ryuta was always generous, ready to give them shelter and stable work, as long as they lived honestly. While everyone was settling down in the capital, the princess took power in place of the king. She immediately revoked the capital hero's title due to his negligence in the campaign. From a symbol of hope, that person was now just a fallen shadow, trudging along with the only servant still loyal to him. In contrast to the tense atmosphere out there, Ryuta and Fenris lived simply in their small house. Though calling each other husband and wife, the 2 still maintained just enough distance. One night, in the quiet space, Ryuta silently thanked the White Wolf girl for being by his side from the beginning, helping him find peace in a strange world. Before he could finish speaking, Fenris had already fallen asleep, her mouth slightly curved as if dreaming a sweet dream. That morning, the sky was unusually clear. The group of friends suggested that Ryuta and Fenris should go out to relax, leaving the housework to them. The wolf was visibly happy, pulling her husband to stroll around town, eating, shopping for various items. When Ryuta asked what she wanted as a gift, Fen just smiled and examined each stall. After a while of choosing, both stopped in front of a gemstone stall. A sparkling gem made them pause. Without hesitation, Ryuta bought it for his wife as a thank you for always standing by his side. That evening, Fenris admired the jewelry all night, her eyes shining with indescribable joy. The 4 remaining girls, though still encouraging the couple to have fun, ended up sitting each in their own corner, none sticking close. Meanwhile, Fen had fallen asleep at some unknown time, rolling onto Ryuta's bed. Though initially shy, the distance between the 2 gradually narrowed through each moment together. Elsewhere, the capital hero, now an outlaw, secretly infiltrated the national treasury. Though he had lost his status, his combat stats were still outstanding. The maid accompanying him kept calling him by his old title, believing he would regain glory. Flattered, he became more engrossed in searching for powerful items that could turn the tide. Finally, a strange voice whispered, tempting him to release a sealed entity in exchange for power. That voice led him to the deepest room, where an evil sword was hidden. The maid felt uneasy, as besides him, no one could hear that sound. Nevertheless, the one nursing dreams of revenge needed no reason. As soon as he touched the sword, a dark force erupted, awakening an ancient demon. It granted him 3 wishes. What he wished for would be revealed later. When the king was absent, the authority temporarily fell to Princess Iris. Faced with the chaotic situation, she decided to summon an ancient prophet. As a leading magical kingdom, having to rely on divination showed the level of deadlock they were facing. Right after, a strange type of magic ring automatically attached to the necks of all residents in the castle. Iris immediately understood the cause and ordered an inspection of the treasury. The prophet confirmed that the demon who had once been sealed had been released. Those rings were signs that the wearers would become substitutes each time the demon granted a wish. Only then did Iris reveal a long-standing secret. Ancestors had once made a pact with the demon to destroy the demon lord, in exchange for sacrificing half the population on the continent. Because the price was too high, later generations chose to seal that entity. Now, the person who was once the capital hero, now just an exile, had broken the seal, causing the calamity to return. The entire kingdom now only had survival time until the final wish was fulfilled. The prophet immediately set to work, not needing to draw cards to firmly predict that to save the world, they needed to find the true hero. That person was Ryuta, living in seclusion west of Kryrode. Nevertheless, Iris did not permit mobilizing the army. She realized that dividing forces at this time was a reckless action. She herself would set out to find the last hope. Meanwhile, Ryuta had just started his business activities, specializing in equipment made from dragon scales. While trading, he was also learning about the market, building a network of relationships. Outside, 2 girls who were once his students silently watched, admiring his flexibility in the role of a merchant. Ballyrosa could only sigh, truly an ideal man that many desired. One might think Ballyrosa would be jealous seeing Fen intimate with Ryuta. But in fact, she only felt happy because finding someone as kind as him was rare. Fen immediately denied this, teasing back that Demon Lord Go seemed very interested in Ballyrosa. But she always found ways to avoid him. Just then, Ryuta returned, and the whole group went home together. On the way, Fen gently reminded that although her husband worked diligently indeed, sometimes she still felt sad just staying at home. Before she could finish, the warning system sent an emergency signal a demon had just approached. Just as they turned around, both faced Hata, the one summoned from the first wish of the market corner hero, with the sole objective of eliminating Ryuta. He immediately launched an attack. Fen didn't hesitate to rush forward to take the blow for her husband, stunning Ryuta. The defense system was immediately activated, creating a protective shield around the three people. But the situation was still very dangerous. Ryuta tried to use recovery magic, but Fen's wounds were beyond the system's capabilities. A series of healing skills were ineffective. Meanwhile, Hare continued to chant high-level magic, creating a destructive light beam across the area, turning the town into a sea of fire. Nevertheless, Ryuta stood firm thanks to the automatic protection layer. Right after, the system announced that he had copied the opponent's spell. Both sides prepared to enter a battle of equal power between a supreme demon and one possessing stats beyond limits. The upcoming would be a true divine power showdown, with no room for leniency. Under the gloomy sunset covering the battlefield, Theo didn't immediately rush into a life-or-death confrontation with Hama, the one who had made him hate to the extreme. Instead, he remained silent for a moment to let his mind drift back to the past, successively recalling memories associated with Fen, the wolf girl who was once a member of the Demon Lord's army, but gave up everything for him. In this strange world, both had relied on each other through lonely days. She was the first to reach out and pull him from the deep pit of isolation. And he, intentionally or unintentionally, had pulled her into irreversible changes. In his boiling anger, Ryuta activated the time reversal spell, healing all injuries for Emily. She woke up with a perfect body, her eyes sparkling as she looked at the man who had not hesitated to break boundaries to protect her. In front, Ryuta was overwhelming Hana, the demon who had once been someone else's tool with pure power requiring no ritual or verbal incantation. Each attack launched was a combination of will and emotion, enough to tear apart all the darkness defenses the opponent had once prided himself on. As Hana staggered, Emily rushed forward, embracing Ryuta from behind. That hug was not just advice to stop, but also a support for him to halt before the edge of losing himself. Ryuta, though still angry, was motionless before the genuine emotions from the person beside him. He let go, leaving Hana lying and breathing heavily on the ground, his eyes filled with fear mixed with regret. At the same time, Princess Lithia's group reached the desolate western region. Though not fully recovered after the Great Purification spell, they still struggled forward, fearing a disaster about to happen. Not long after, the protective rings on everyone's necks simultaneously lost their effect. The binding magic that had once connected to the wish suddenly disappeared. The reason wasn't hard to guess. Huff no longer had the ability to maintain the covenant. Elsewhere, the evil soul occupied the body of the maid who had once followed the capital hero, turning her into Marina's, a dark witch full of hatred. Without wasting time, she immediately sealed the one who was once her master, turning him into a mindless giant creature, as a tool for revenge against the royal family. Discovering traces of the princess's group, she changed direction, rushing like a black tornado to completely destroy the royal bloodline. Meanwhile, Ryuta was treating Hata at the small house. After the defeat, she no longer had an arrogant appearance, becoming cautious, obedient like someone who had just awakened from a long dream. Through memory-reading magic, Ryuta clearly saw everything. Hata was forced to grant wishes according to selfish commands from the capital hero, becoming a tool serving power. In that situation, Emily surprisingly suggested keeping Hata. The reason given was very straightforward: setting her free would be dangerous, imprisoning her would be wasteful, keeping her close for monitoring would be more reasonable. Although Ryuta was still worried, even mentioning the near-death experience, he finally nodded. When Emily had decided, he could only believe that people's hearts could change, as long as they were guided correctly. And so Hata, the demon who had once sown disaster, now became a full-time housekeeper in the small house in the west, where Ryuta and Emily chose to start a peaceful life, away from the vortex of power and war. Hata was surprised to discover that Ryuta, the person who had just confronted her, possessed stats far beyond normal standards. It was no longer at the human level, but almost divine. Admiring this power, she decided to be absolutely loyal to him. However, in Hata's heart arose suspicion when she recalled the complex look that her new master had once given her. This worry made her inevitably suspect whether she had just taken in someone who liked to be hit. After the battle, Ryuta thought about restoring the devastated town with the time reversal spell. Nevertheless, Hata immediately objected. She emphasized that controlling time always carried unpredictable risks, especially when applied on a large scale. That spell could be used to save individuals, but pulling an entire area back to the past could create harmful chain effects. After hearing this, Ryuta curiously asked why he could use this type of magic. Hana pointed to the infinity symbol on the status board and explained that this stat allowed Ryuta to copy any skill he came into contact with, learn unlimited magic, even grasp abilities beyond time. That afternoon, Ryuta's house officially welcomed a new member, Hata. The three girls who were once students became even more worried. Previously, there had been a demon lord coming to dine. Now there was a demon returning to be a housekeeper. In the evening, Ryuta couldn't stop thinking about what Hata had said in the afternoon. He suddenly realized that with his current skills, returning to the old world was completely within reach. Fen, sensing her husband's mood, asked directly if one day he would leave this place. She didn't stop him, just softly requested that if he returned to his homeland, take her along. Hearing this, Ryuta was touched, hugged his wife, and affirmed he had no intention of leaving. In the old world, he had been discriminated against, rejected. But now, this place was his true home. Right after, Ryuta formally proposed, hoping Fen would become his true life partner. Fen laughed, saying she had long considered them husband and wife. The proposal, though late, still made her heart flutter. That night, while the two were immersed in their private moment, a cold breeze passed by. Hare, the one considered a close servant, appeared in the corner of the room, calmly announcing she had observed the entire scene just now. She believed her mission was to always stay close to Ryuta, the supreme being, at all times. Fen sighed, and Ryuta could only shake his head. Though possessing boundless power, sometimes he still couldn't win against the tactlessness of household members. From now on, Ha was ordered absolutely not to appear uninvited during private moments, because not always did the Supreme Being need someone to witness. Although rumors about Fio and his achievements had spread far in many lands, the place where Princess Lithia and her entourage were trudging to find him was too remote, isolated, to the extent that no one knew that name. Meanwhile, in another corner of the world, Fio's simple life continued to flow peacefully. The hot meals, increasingly refined thanks to Fenris's cooking skills, were now effectively supported by two demons who were once enemies, now becoming dedicated servants. With their mysterious abilities, they could complete housework with just a snap of fingers, keeping the entire house always in a clean, tidy state. In contrast to that impressive efficiency, the four girls who were once Fio students were no different from genuine freeloaders. Among them, Ballyrosa was slightly less miserable. She was the only one with a genuine farming background, with additional support from her pet bear. So the field work progressed considerably. Though not good at fighting, when it came to plowing, tending fields, no one could match her. Bears also had some knowledge about horse care and cart rental, at least contributing a little to the family economy. It seemed that precisely because they sensed anxiety in their owner's heart, her horses always tried to cuddle, comfort, as if to say, everything will be okay. The remaining one was Bono, a girl who had been slow to understand since childhood. Having dreamed of becoming a royal mage, following in the footsteps of her father and brother, she had gone through an incident that made that ideal become dim. Nevertheless, Fenris still persistently helped her practice magic, making Bono gradually regain her determination to continue the path she had chosen. Suddenly, a scream rang out from the backyard. The whole group immediately ran out and encountered a pitch-black creature, a dark unicorn oddly dancing in the vegetable garden, nearly ramming straight into the girls. Fortunately, Bono reacted in time, using magic to stop it. Only then did Ballyrosa confess that she had brought this unicorn home thinking it was gentle. Unexpectedly, it went crazy, and now she was afraid it would harm others, so was planning to eliminate it first. Luckily, Biller, the horse expert, came up with a plan in time. She transformed the bear into a one-horned rabbit, then used rope to coordinate and tame the animal like a genuine Western cowboy. After the incident, Biller suddenly had the thought of whether they could utilize the vast land around to make a farm or horse training school. This land belonged to a wealthy lord. If they could buy it, like how Fenris had bought their current house, all plans could become reality. Clearly, a long-term strategy was gradually forming in Biller's mind. Meanwhile, Fio and Fenris were having a rare trip to the district. He was looking for business opportunities, while his wife saw this as a private date, something rare amid the crowd of light bulbs at home. Fio was discussing with the armor shop owner to design a light armor suitable for women, while Fenris just silently watched her husband work, undisguised pride. Suddenly, the sky changed color. Black clouds came, not only covering where the couple was standing but spreading to Princess Lithia's position. From above, a strange pair appeared. One was a giant monster. One was a black magic witch, Demlina's. Without many words, their target was the princess. Instead of escorting the princess to retreat, 4 bodyguards chose to stay and fight. However, Demlina's only needed to wave her hand to blow them all away. At that time, the 2 demons at home also immediately sensed the danger and ran to support. Theo quickly realized that the monster was actually a transformed person, and the witch Demlinas was someone who had once ruled the entire kingdom with black magic in the past, was defeated and sealed under the holy sword. This resurrection was probably due to someone accidentally breaking the seal. In the urgent situation, Hata asked permission to directly confront Demlinas, while Theo and Fenris focused on rescuing civilians, preventing the tragedy from recurring. While Princess Lithia was fighting with Marinas, Hata unexpectedly interjected. Although Linas tried to cast a thunder summoning spell, this demon just snapped her fingers to neutralize it, declaring that all magic attacks were now ineffective against her. When magic no longer had an effect, the witch had to switch to close combat combined with sneak attacks using invisibility spells, but it was still useless. Finally, Marinas opened a dark gate, enhancing Reiner the deformed hero, making him gigantic like in a superhero movie. Just as the monster stood up imposingly, all the maintaining magic was broken. Reiner's body immediately contracted back to its original form. It turned out Ryuta had intervened, concerned it would cause damage to civilians. Seeing this, Ha immediately bowed her head asking for forgiveness, just hoping to complete the remaining mission. She raised her hand to the air, condensing Marinas' soul into a candy and then swallowing it whole. Only the unconscious maid and Reiner lying flat in the middle of the street remained. At that moment, Lithia officially faced Ryuta. She apologized on behalf of the court for all the troubles that her father and the fake hero had caused. At the same time, the princess let him know they needed a new symbol to revive the people's faith, hoping he would accept the title back. Ryuta immediately refused. He had no intention of returning to the path of war, only wanting to live peacefully with his wife and friends. Returning home, the three girls were waiting to present their plan to expand the land. Biller needed more space to train animals, Blot wanted to grow vegetables to sell at the market, and Rosa intended to do practical agriculture. Although Ryuta was ready to spend money to buy, they still hoped to negotiate themselves to prove their ability. He had to compromise by putting the land in his name, but dividing the profits, with each person keeping their corresponding portion. As soon as the agreement was completed, the land was also handed over. Everyone was excited, except Blot, who didn't like using magic in agriculture, believing that only sewing by hand could be called genuine labor. Bono, the girl who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke up. She hoped to learn more about land reclamation magic because she was about to become a lecturer at a magic academy in another city. Hearing the reasonable analysis, Blot had to give a portion of land to Hata for experimentation. By evening, the atmosphere in the house was bustling with future plans. Although everyone was busy, Rosa seemed contemplative. At the same time, Ryuta expressed his desire to open his own store. He shared the idea with Emily, and while speaking, unexpectedly gave her a wedding ring. Although they had been husband and wife for a long time, only now did they have the opportunity to give a ring, making her unable to hide her happiness. While the two happily enjoyed a simple life, Reiner, now no longer a hero, was imprisoned along with the maid who had once been possessed. That ending showed that, in this world, even if one had once stood at the peak, a wrong decision was enough to push both into the abyss. Ballyrosa was immersed in a strange dream. She wore a dazzlingly magnificent dress, appearing in the middle of a decorated great hall amid the joyful sounds of monsters. A figure with noble bearing emerged from the shadows. Demon Lord Go approached her, offering blessings for the upcoming marriage. The hall cheered jubilantly, calling her queen, while Go boldly declared he would conquer the entire world to present to his beloved. Those bustling sounds ended as soon as Ballyrosa startled awake in the silent night, sweat covering her forehead. A strange feeling of anxiety caused her insomnia, leading to a prolonged state of fatigue that gradually made other household members notice something was wrong. Fairy quickly noticed Ballyrosa's haggard face and questioned her. After some hesitation, Bali finally admitted that recently she had been having nightmares, mainly related to Demon Lord Go. Fairy, who belonged to the Wolf Fang tribe, pointed out that in their tribe's legend, dreams often reflected wishes deep in the subconscious. Hearing this, the whole group immediately turned their eyes toward the girl who had once declared she hated the Demon Lord bitterly. Everyone needed no further words to clearly understand that Ballyrosa's heart had been moved. Though she tried to deny it, her emotions could no longer be hidden. Meanwhile, at Fenris's control center, the defense system of the entire area suddenly issued a warning signal that a high-level magic source had entered the protected area. However, since no destructive behavior had been detected, he temporarily decided to monitor the situation. In the royal capital, Princess Effa was informed that Fenris had just sent a donation of rare gold coins, a type no longer commonly circulated in the kingdom. After investigation, she realized that Fenris had once been Banaza, a person summoned from another world and then exiled by her father, the king, forced to live in seclusion for a long time. Recognizing the past injustice, the princess couldn't help feeling remorseful for having once turned her back on someone who had goodwill toward the kingdom. Meanwhile, the capital hero, after escaping with his maid, was still hiding in a remote area. He rummaged through a magic bag accidentally taken from the prison and discovered a mysterious item, a shovel capable of digging holes so quickly that it could create an underground cave in an instant. Unfortunately, due to not thinking carefully, both fell into the hole with no way out, temporarily having to get used to the smell of earth while waiting for a new opportunity. In the castle on the other side of the battle line, Demon Lord Go continued to send people searching for Fenris everywhere, despite objections from some subordinates, including Ulam Minas. She believed that instead of wasting time searching for someone who had disappeared, the demon race should take advantage of the current situation to counterattack, especially when the human army had just been exhausted after the wide-scale purification ritual. However, Go maintained that Fenris was a threat that could not be taken lightly. The power to erase an entire forest with just one spell made him view Fenris as a living bomb. Tensions within the demon race were increasing, especially when another General Uagat had begun to doubt the Demon Lord's clarity and was brewing a coup plot. Meanwhile, in the distant countryside where Fenris's warm home with his loved ones was located, peaceful life continued to flow. One day, the couple was strolling in town when they unexpectedly met an old lady who used to run a general store, now packing up to close because she had no more supplies. Although the war situation had not yet reached here, its silent effects were visible everywhere. That afternoon, both were invited by Ballyrosa for a meal. She shared that she had just been promoted as an adventurer and wanted to express her gratitude. However, before they could start eating, the two demon servants rushed in to alert that a powerful energy source was approaching. The group immediately became vigilant, but Fenris and Fairy quickly recognized that the new arrival was none other than Demon Lord Go. While they sighed in relief knowing he had no hostile intentions, Ballyrosa froze. The expression on her face said it all. The meal had just begun when the mysterious person who had appeared before suddenly revealed himself. It turned out to be an intelligence officer under Demon Lord Gawain, coming to find Fenris. However, the person he really wanted to meet was Ballyrosa. This surprised everyone, as she was clearly the one who had once single-handedly stopped an entire demon army. The dining atmosphere quickly shifted to serious exchange. Gawain shared that in the past, he used to disguise himself to explore human cuisine, and now hearing of Ballyrosa's cooking talent made him even more curious. Despite his dark appearance, he still exuded calmness and composure. He believed that cultural development was no less important than military strength. When Ballyrosa directly asked if this was a form of espionage, he admitted it and clearly stated his intention to invite Ryuta to join his side. The feeling of worry in her gradually turned to anger because he was once again interfering with the peaceful life they were trying to build. Gawain, however, maintained a gentle attitude, suggesting that humans always associated demons with calamity, using that as an excuse for oppression. Fenris had long lived with Ryuta without seeing any problem. Hata then interjected, clearly explaining that the fundamental difference between humans and demons lay in the amount of demonic essence inside. When concentrated too much, humans would view it as contamination needing purification. Conversely, the demon faction often carried belligerent thoughts, ready for conflict. Racial conflict was still extremely deep, so the demon lord could not sit still forever. Nevertheless, sensing that the atmosphere had been clouded by his presence, he asked permission to leave. On the way home, Rosa remained pensive without saying much, only knowing that her previous fear of Gawain had disappeared. Ryuta also had some reflections. He had once expected this world to be more peaceful than his old place, but it turned out the conflicts here were even more intense. Looking at his wife sitting beside him, he unconsciously pulled her close. Dog food was fully served again. Elsewhere, the couple who had escaped from prison was trying to climb a cliff. The maid climbed first, but the luggage in her hands was too heavy, making her steps staggering. Reiner tried to help, but unexpectedly his hand slipped, and both slid back down. A new day began at Theo's warm home with his wife. That morning's breakfast included hamburgers which actually only had the ham part, while the bread layer was nowhere to be seen. Nevertheless, the aroma and rich flavor made everyone satisfied. Fairy's cooking skills had clearly improved significantly, earning endless praise from everyone. All acknowledged the contribution of her previous cooking teacher. Fairy took the opportunity to recount that she had gone back to thank her teacher and express gratitude. Though everyone felt as if she was just finding an excuse to show off her wedding ring, the teacher, though guessing the hidden intention behind this unexpected visit, still enthusiastically guided her in preparing a few more dishes suitable for family meals. He even suggested a menu for children. Just at the mention of kids, the entire dining table suddenly fell silent for a moment, the atmosphere condensed by wandering thoughts about future family plans. Just as the atmosphere began to ease, a knock on the door sounded. When the door opened, the whole household was surprised to discover that the visitor was none other than Princess Silo, who had once caused much trouble. She appeared with a large entourage of guards, her expression carrying an indescribable solemnity. Theo was annoyed at the sight, as he had long not wanted to be associated with the hero title anymore. This time the princess didn't come to cause conflict, but instead to apologize for past actions. The conversation had to continue over tea, where the princess expressed her wish to speak privately with Theo. Everyone in the house politely withdrew, except for Fenris, the steadfast wife who wouldn't move half a step away from her husband. Theo, seeing his wife's determination, stated that if there was anything that needed to be hidden from his wife, he didn't need to hear it either. As soon as those words ended, Fenris's face brightened significantly, while Princess Silo had to accept. She pulled out a map showing the positions of the Grand Mages who were secretly protecting the country's crucial points. This was originally a royal secret, but she was willing to share it with Theo, as her trust in him was not small. She frankly admitted that the internal situation of the capital was currently unstable. The magical protection layer was gradually depleting, while the key mages had not yet recovered. The suburban areas, far from the center, would soon fall into a state without defenders. She hoped to ask Theo to help protect these places not as a warrior, but simply as someone maintaining order and defense. This request caused Fenris to react quite strongly. She believed her husband had withdrawn from the war and could not continuously be pulled into troubles from outside. However, the princess explained clearly that the king was still in a coma. Once he woke up, things would no longer be peaceful as now. If he discovered that Theo had contacted Demon Lord Go, he would use that as an excuse to accuse him of treason. Taking advantage of the time when power temporarily lay in her hands, Silo wanted to turn the situation around. She planned to expose the king's mistakes, forcing him to abdicate, and then officially accept the throne. However, what Silo really needed was not Theo's presence on the battle line. Instead, she just hoped he would maintain a neutral attitude, not standing on the side of any forces against the kingdom. As for the provincial areas, his presence would help maintain stability, preventing the war from spreading. Theo seemed to understand this real intention, so he nodded in agreement, on the condition that Fenris no longer objected. Although initially hesitant, seeing clearly that her husband had no intention of participating in the war, but only wanted to prevent casualties, she also agreed. In another corner of the world, in a wild bush, two wanted fugitives continued to seek hiding. Selah, the steadfast maid still following the former hero prison escapee, though hungry, tired, and knowing she was only causing more trouble. Nevertheless, when given a few cookies from him, her face brightened considerably. Once again, the quiet care moved her, to the point of blurting out her true feelings, that since the day she was rescued from prison, she could not leave his shadow. While they were confiding in each other, a magical force suddenly appeared. A thin thread like a misty fog fell from the sky, tightly binding the two in an instant. It was none other than Fu Fun Yuegard's loyal subordinate carrying out the plot to overthrow Demon Lord Go. Back at Theo's small house, night fell, bringing a sense of tranquility. By the bedside, Fairy gently moved closer to her husband, speaking softly. Theo seemed to be still troubled by the morning's proposals. He didn't want to be drawn into the vortex of war, but also couldn't turn a blind eye to the pain innocent people had to endure. He had once said he hoped for a world where humans and demons could live in harmony, so that if one day he and his wife had a child, that child would not have to grow up in fear. Hearing this, Fenris didn't say much, just squeezed her husband's hand tighter. In the dim light of the night, her answer was simply that wherever he stepped, she would go with him. Some villages began evacuating due to demon attacks. A little girl picking up seeds would have been in danger if Fenrir and Ryuta hadn't appeared in time. They set up a barrier to block the monsters without counterattacking, causing Fenrir to grumble that her husband was too kind. He maintained a neutral stance, not accepting rewards to avoid being seen as on the human side. Actually, since hearing the princess's story, Ryuta had been moved. Fenrir, meanwhile, suspected needlessly, thinking her husband wanted to marry the princess. The demons were angry because Fenrir was helping ordinary people. Ryuta advised retreat. They ignored it, letting a one-eyed giant step forward. He despised the Wolf Fang race, even mentioning Feng Gazin's death as a joke. Fenrir was infuriated, deciding to directly teach him a lesson. Ryuta only instructed not to kill. Fenrir moved nimbly, switching positions with her opponent, causing him to fall into his own attack. She cast a spell to lock his limbs, ending it neatly. When his comrades prepared to rush in, Ryuta used magic to bind them all, gently warning them before releasing them. Fenrir praised her husband for increasingly knowing how to intimidate without needing to use his hands. Nevertheless, she still preferred resolving things with fists rather than words. The villagers appeared afterward to thank them. Initially, they were wary of Fenrir, but Ryuta reassured them, saying she was no different from a familiar pet. A little girl even ran out to thank them personally. Hearing Ryuta say he was acting on the princess's commission, the villagers trusted them even more. After these events, everywhere began to whisper about a masked hero and a giant wolf appearing throughout the provinces to drive away demons. They always left messages saying they were sent by the princess, boosting her reputation. When the princess heard the news, she was moved to tears because finally, Ryuta had accepted to help. While the couple continued roaming to help people, someone was observing them from above Demon Lord Gold. However, the recent attacks were not by him but led by Uegard. While Gold left the palace, Uegard staged a coup, seizing the throne. He also had plans to use the two captives caught earlier to perform an evil god ritual to eliminate Gold. Learning of this, the true Demon Lord rushed back, preparing for an imminent decisive battle to reclaim power. Turning back time to a few days earlier, on a gentle breezy afternoon, both Demon Lord Go and Uliminus suddenly appeared at the doorstep of Fenris and Fairy's house, bearing tired appearances but filled with determination. Their purpose was none other than to ask for temporary shelter for a short time. At first, Fairy thought Go was joking, but when she saw the seriousness in his eyes, she had no choice but to seriously inquire about the situation. Go began recounting recent events in the demon world, since Uegat, one of the high-ranking generals, declared a coup and seized the throne. Both the old power system and the three heavenly kings had fallen into a passive position. Uliminus angrily questioned her three peers why they didn't immediately arrest the traitor, but all remained silent and said they would be witnesses to a decisive battle for power between Go and Uegat. One of them believed that this decisive battle would be an opportunity for Go to regain momentum and consolidate his position. Another side that the once passionate king now only cared about visiting the human world, abandoning his entire army during tense wartime. There was even someone who half-jokingly suggested letting Uegat try sitting on the throne first to get used to the position. Forced into an unavoidable situation, Go still refused to fight, asserting that he no longer had interest in meaningless power struggles. Despite this, Uegat still loudly accused Go of losing courage, even causing the army to doubt his loyalty. At that point, Demon Lord Go retorted that it was Uegat who had unilaterally ordered attacks on humans without approval. Seeing that even the most loyal people remained silent in agreement with the rebel, Go suddenly removed the ring symbolizing his throne and threw it forward, announcing his abdication in front of everyone. No one expected that a light kick from him would send Uegat flying out of the castle. A strike that didn't require magical power, just an immediate reaction to the other hurting Illuminas. Although he had clearly demonstrated who was stronger, Go firmly maintained his decision to leave the throne. This action stunned the three heavenly kings, and the demon world residents were equally shocked. Taking advantage of the chaos, the couple who had been captured by Uegat safely escaped. Back to the present, Go now had nothing left except a wish to live peacefully in the human world. Betrayed by his own people, homeless and without possessions, he could only turn to his old friend Fenris to ask for temporary residence for a few days. Fenris understood the situation but still wanted to ask the opinion of the household members first. At that moment, all four girls living together also appeared one by one, among whom only Ballyrosa showed strong opposition. Go then confessed that after abdication, all intelligence forces under Uliminus also departed together, leaving him with no one by his side. The little money he had saved, he distributed to them as a final gesture of gratitude. Uliminus was touched by Go's generosity but also exasperated by his habit of spending without calculation. Fenris finally spoke up, saying that giving up the throne didn't mean losing one's character or ideals. Mr. Go was no longer the Demon Lord, but a person who once dreamed of building peace between the two worlds. Even as a temporary guest, he still wanted to contribute to that goal. After some debate, apart from Ballyrosa who maintained her opposition stance, the others had to agree to let him stay. Go's presence now marked a new turning point for Fenris's house that had never been normal. Since Gawain began living with everyone, Fenris appeared quite happy because the house had recruited another strong person. Though once the Demon Lord, now he was just Go Enham, called affectionately by Fen. However, integration wasn't easy. Boilatome firmly refused to let him touch the fields, and Biller didn't dare entrust him with the horses, as all demon beasts were terrified when they saw Gawain. Failing in farm work, he had to follow Fenris to the district. There, when seeing the dragon scale shield, Gawain recalled the battle from before. Though he had once confronted Ryuta's couple, he didn't hold a grudge because they were only defending themselves. The three later chatted quite happily, making Uliminus, a demon knight observing nearby, begin to feel confused upon seeing that scene. Not just her, even Ballyrosa suddenly left after silently watching that intimate group together. In the evening, everyone gathered for dinner, except for the female knight who remained outside. When night fell, she went to the balcony to gaze at the stars and was invited for tea by Ryuta and his wife. Ryuta shared that letting Gawain stay was a decision made after discussion, though it might seem abrupt. Fen thought everyone now resembled a family, each with their own joy. Hearing this, Ballyrosa confessed her feelings. She wanted to live with everyone. but couldn't erase the painful memories caused by demons from her childhood. Though understanding that Gawain and Fen weren't evil, her heart still couldn't accept living under the same roof. In response, Ryuta expressed empathy. Gawain himself came here not to cause trouble, but simply because he wanted a peaceful place. Fenris then added, if Bali had once taught her how to bake, helping her grow, then how could she be called useless? The conversation ended with smiles from all three people. The next day, Balirosa announced she accepted Gawain and Hata staying, but would always remain vigilant. Gawain extended his hand to shake, but she said she would do so when she truly trusted him. Fenris giggled, saying someday the two might even hold hands walking down the wedding aisle. At the same time, the prison escapees, the market corner hero and maid Saria, were still running through demon territory. After stealing another treasure, they dreamed of selling it for money, then bathing in hot springs and eating hot pot. Little did they know that because of this, they were now wanted fugitives. Although once beaten badly by the former demon lord, Uagad still legitimately sat on the throne. However, recently, he had encountered many troubles as the demon army was continuously suppressed by humans to the point where they couldn't advance a step further. While Uagad was angry because the marching routes were trapped everywhere by opponents, Fufun reported that the situation was as serious as during the human resistance period. Unable to accept the army remaining stagnant, Uagad roared, ordering more troops to the front line regardless of consequences. Ignoring warnings, he vented his anger on Fufun, causing her to be thrown out. The three generals beneath him, seeing this, took the opportunity to whisper behind the new demon lord's back, criticizing his foolish and strategy-lacking way of commanding troops. Compared to the time of Demon Lord Gold, the army then always had flexible action plans, not falling into chaos like now. And now, the intelligence force that was once under Illuminaz's management had also disbanded, causing a serious decline in the army's morale. While the generals were in despair, Fufun returned from the ceiling, proposing a strategy to improve soldiers' spirits, organizing group activities, specifically a trip to hot springs. While the demon side was finding ways to boost morale, in the human world, Fenris's couple won a hot spring trip. What seemed like an opportunity for a private date turned out to be a group ticket, forcing them to invite more people along. Though slightly disappointed, they still decided to use this opportunity to rest with friends. Upon arrival, the service staff warmly welcomed the group, even distributing uniforms to each person. Fairy took the opportunity to ask about the effects of the springs here and was accidentally attracted to a special stream that supported reproduction. Her thoughts immediately shifted to a vision of a happy family with small children. The four freeloading girls went to a separate room, accidentally encountering a familiar figure. Looking closely, they recognized it was Uagad with Fufun, mingling among tourists, their real purpose being to organize team building to revive the spirits of their soldiers. Not only that, but the three generals under Uagad were also present, cleverly disguised to avoid detection. They all wore demonic essence suppression charms to hide their identities. However, Fenris's group of friends soon discovered this and suspected their real purpose. Faced with this situation, Gold expressed a desire to greet his former subordinates. But Fairy sternly warned that if anyone ruined the peaceful atmosphere here, she wouldn't spare them. That evening, the groups were arranged into separate rooms. Fenris's couple had their private space, while Gold also had a separate room as he didn't want to cause conflicts with his subordinates or old acquaintances. Everyone dispersed to explore the resort. Some girls unexpectedly found a display house about human culture, focusing on fertility symbols, making them curious to learn more. Meanwhile, Fenris found an opportunity to pull her husband to bathe in a special spring where she hoped would support childbearing. However, the hot spring was divided into two separate areas, causing both to soak separated by a wall, only able to whisper conversations. In another development, two twin mages plotted to practice night exercises by borrowing the body of a sealed witch. The plan quickly fell apart when she reacted strongly and chased both out of the mental world. Meanwhile, the others accidentally encountered Uagad and his generals sitting eating, criticizing human food but still devouring it. To stir up the atmosphere, Uagad suggested opening a cultural performance. Fufun didn't hesitate to stand up and perform a strange dance, only to receive an appreciative punch from her boss. Afterward, it was the twin mages' turn to step up and perform a comedy act. However, the performance was quickly interrupted when the demonic essence suppression ring fell off, risking revealing their true identity. More notably, at this resort appeared another familiar couple, for unclear reasons, also silently observing everything. The market corner hero promised Saria they would eat sumptuously if they could sell the crystal they had stolen. However, before they could price it, the stone glowed and absorbed surrounding demonic essence, causing the disguise layer to vanish. A battle between the two groups of performers erupted right after, collapsing a corner of the house. When everyone came out to see, the crystal unexpectedly took over the body of the nameless hero, pushing everything into chaos. On the other side, Balyarasa took the opportunity to chat with Uluminas. The female knight frankly asked if this cat had feelings for Gawain. Before she could answer, the crisis had spread to the resort. A large entity formed from demonic essence rushed in to destroy. The innkeeper tried using charms to stop it, nearly being crushed by a rock if Theo hadn't appeared in time. He immediately commanded Fairy to check the situation while he stopped that creature. Attack spells were ineffective. At that point, Gawain discovered that the creature wasn't a real monster, but condensed demonic essence, a sign that the area was being occupied by demons. Uluminas admitted she had just seen Uagard's group passing by. This assessment further made the group suspect the source of the danger. When everyone was about to temporarily evacuate, Balyarasa immediately objected. She believed that as someone staying in another's home, she couldn't keep running away, much less let Ryuta bear everything. Despite her limited abilities, she still wanted to contribute. After those words, everyone set out together. Uluminas could only mutter some unpleasant words, but her inner self began to waver. Eventually, she was also dragged along with Gawain. Upon arrival, Fairy was already there, ready to deal with anyone who dared to disrupt her vacation. Seeing Gawain, the demons cheered as if reuniting with family, while Uagard immediately stepped out to confront, determined to settle the score with the former demon lord in this rematch. Just as the chaotic battles ended, the peaceful scenery seemed to return to the hot spring resort. But from afar, Boza and the group of girls staying at Theo's house immediately detected something wrong. They quickly withdrew and came to notify the homeowner, signaling that something unusual was happening right on the roof of the main building. There, the showdown between two generations of demon lords Go and Uagard had begun in a most violent manner. Uagard opened with a powerful spell attack, casting while creating an effect that shook the entire area. Yet Go stood firm, seemingly unharmed. Determined not to lose, Uagard immediately flew into the air, summoning a gigantic creature carrying demonic essence, directing it to attack Uluminas directly. Though targeted, this deputy general didn't flinch, as that spell was neutralized by Go as easily as crushing a ball. Meanwhile, Boza came to meet Fenris to express suspicion that Go might be related to a shady plan, leading demons to the resort to cause trouble. After hearing the whole story, Theo still showed absolute trust in his old friend, believing that Go would never intend to betray humans. That sense of assurance came not just from trust, but also because he had witnessed Go acting for the common good many times. However, reality showed that Uagard still hadn't stopped. While the attack with the giant creature was defeated, he continued to launch many other tactics, each time trying to force his opponent into a passive position. But once again, Go used counterattacks, based on simple physics principles utilizing the rotating force from evasive movements, then countering the opposing force back. In the duel, though surrounded and somewhat constrained, Go still controlled the battle, but if he wanted to end it quickly, he needed to remove the magical crystal on the monster controlled by Uagard. Fenris immediately entered the battlefield. She used teleportation, approaching the target neatly. Without using sophisticated techniques, she simply threw a powerful punch that knocked the crystal off, accidentally causing the maid Sayla to fall from the creature's back, nearly losing her life. Fortunately, Go had timely saved that girl, fulfilling his promise that he wouldn't harm innocent people. Right after, Go officially handed over the situation to Uluminas. The deputy general didn't hesitate to question Uagard whether he would retreat or not. However, Uagard had no intention of backing down and was preparing to launch his final move, forcing Go to rush in to stop him. The young demon lord was captured completely while pouring all his strength into the decisive attack, while other generals stood watching without intervening. Fu Fun, Uagard's right hand, also got angry because she was disturbed by Boza's cat, so she deployed skills forcing the opponent to continuously defend. The climax of the battle was when Uagard used the black demon form, transforming to reverse the situation. He pushed Go into a passive position, continuously attacking both with techniques and mockery, suggesting that the opponent had lost his edge due to living too emotionally. However, Go wasn't outdone. He unleashed a unique spell, originally magic created from human technology, that could completely seal the demonic essence in Uagard, transforming him from a mighty being into an ordinary person. At the same time, the staff working at the resort began to act. An old lady pulled out charms, followed by the entire staff simultaneously activating sealing magic. The effect was immediate. The entire demon group was held firmly in place, unable to move. It was all thanks to spells engraved in the uniforms. The protection system of this place automatically punishing anyone who dared to cause trouble. As a result, Uagard's army was forced to flee from this place, leaving the stage for more deserving people. Fenris at that time was still helping Theo chase the mischievous fly that had interrupted their vacation. Sayla couldn't help, only able to stand there and cry helplessly. Thanks to Fio's restoration spell, the entire resort was restored as if conflict had never occurred. Everyone worked together to repair, making the staff here not only grateful but also admiring of the special guests. When things settled down, everyone returned to relax. Fenris still thought about having children, while Ballyrosa and Uliminus bathed together in a pool, and the small cat, who was very afraid of hot water after being forced into the pool, gradually felt comfortable. The two girls suddenly developed a silent competition when Ballyrosa's physical stats were openly observed. Elsewhere, the two young men Billers and Barrett, after viewing the cultural exhibition about physiology, seemed to have satisfied their curiosity. The group ate together happily at dinner, when Fio had the opportunity to chat with Go. They soaked in the hot spring, conversing sincerely. Go admitted he was very impressed with Fio from their first meeting, seeing him emit dense demonic essence while maintaining a calm demeanor, not to mention always acting righteously, protecting the people. Go believed that between him and Fio, a bridge could be formed for a harmonious future between humans and demons. The evening party continued with a lively atmosphere. The resort staff even specially sent Fenris a small gift, an eel-filled cake, a dish not only delicious but also meaningful. Just that was enough to make the mischievous wife extremely satisfied. Ballyrosa actively thanked Gawain for defeating the monster without anyone getting hurt. Gawain only responded with a sincere gaze. That warm look made Uliminus flustered, her face so red she curled up like a cat doused with water. That night, the whole group slept soundly. Only Fenrir took the trouble to cover each person with blankets. When everything was quiet, she went to meet her husband. Ryuta asked his wife how she felt about humans. She frankly admitted she originally found them weak, but couldn't stop wanting to learn from them. Actually, the only reason was love. That was what made her willing to contribute to the effort of reconciling the two races, for the future of both. The next morning, as everyone was leaving, Fenrir suddenly became radiant. Everyone could guess something, except Gawain, who still didn't understand. Ryuta used teleportation to bring the entire group home. Though somewhat wondering why he hadn't done so from the beginning, everyone quickly returned to their daily rhythm. Bono officially became a lecturer, while Hao had mastered using magic for cultivation. She grew vegetables, while Biller handled the transportation for selling, creating an effective self-sufficient model. Gawain began to take interest in human weapons, often researching manufacturing methods with Flo. It seemed he was preparing to open his own shop like Ryuta. The shield he forged pleased Ballyrosa very much. She also announced that her coronation ceremony would soon take place. Though still a bit worried about the risk from the demon side, Gawain reassured that Uagard had not yet recovered his power. After the ceremony, she revealed that her father had once been forced to abdicate and then disappeared. Now, she was determined to rebuild the country worthy of Ryuta's help. Meanwhile, the wanted poster for the couple who stole from the treasury was still posted everywhere. The market corner hero still dreamed of national restoration, while Saria continued to accompany him digging tunnels to hide. Life in the other world continued, amid things that had been completed and things yet to be fulfilled.